The Satanic Mill by Otfried Preussler. The third year, 2. The Way You Fly with Wings. Everyone took to young Lobush right from the start. Even Merton was kind to him, even though he showed it without words by a nod of the head, a glance, or a gesture. Merton was cutting himself off from his companions more and more. He did his work, he went through the day's routine. He did not seem to be sulking, nor did he object to anything the master or the head journeyman told him to do. But he would not speak. He never spoke at all, not to anyone, and he preserved this silence he had imposed on himself since New Year's Day, even on Friday evenings when the master read to them from the book of necromancy. The master was undisturbed. "It's up to you. How hard you work to learn the secret arts, as you know," he said to his men. "It's all the same to me." Crabbit worried about Merton, and he felt he ought to try to talk to him. One day soon he, Petar, and Merton happened to be sent to the granary to turn the grain. They had hardly started when Hanzo came to fetch Petar away to the stable. "Carry on by yourselves. I'll send someone else to help as soon as there's a man free," said Hanzo. "Right," said Crabbit. He waited until Hanzo and Petar had left, closing the door behind them, then putting his grain shovel down in the corner. And placing a hand on Merton's shoulder, he asked, "Do you know what Michael once told me?" Merton turned to face them. "The dead are dead," said Crabbit. He said it twice, and the second time he added, "Those who die at the mill in the fen of Castle are forgotten as if they had never been. That's the only way the others can go on living, and life must go on." Merton had listened quietly, and now he took Crabbit's hand, which was still lying on his shoulder, and removed it in silence and went on with his work. Crabbit was at a loss. What was he to do about Merton? Tonda would have been able to advise him, perhaps Michael too, but now Crabbit was on his own. It was not so easy. He was glad Lobush was there. The boy fared like all the other apprentices before him, and he could hardly have stood his first few weeks at the mill but for Crabbit's help. And Crabbit did help him. He knew how to contrive it so that they met from time to time at work, not too often as it happened by chance. Then he would stop and exchange a few words with the boy, put a hand on his shoulder, and following Tonda's example, let his own power flow into him. He had learned how to do this one Friday evening. "But mind you don't let anyone notice," he impressed upon Lobush. "Take care the master doesn't learn of it, or Leishko either. He carries tales to the master." "Aren't you allowed to help me?" Lobush asked. "What if someone finds out?" "Never mind that," Crabbit answered. "The main thing is not to give yourself away." Young as he was, Lobush got to the point at once. He played his part with considerable skill, and only the two of them knew that he was pretending for the benefit of the others. And things were not really quite so bad as his pitiful grunts and groans suggested. Every evening he went straight to bed after supper, hardly able to crawl up the attic stairs. Every morning, even at breakfast, he looked as tired as if he was about to fall off his chair at any moment. Lobush was a bright lad and an excellent play actor, and more besides, as Crabbit found 2 weeks later when he discovered Lobush hacking away at a great mound of ice behind the mill. "There's something I wanted to ask you," the boy began. "Will you answer me?" "If I can," said Crabbit. "You've been helping me since I came to this mill," said Lobush. "And you've kept on helping me, even though the master's not to know because he'd be angry with you if he did. That's plain enough. Anyone can work that out." "Is that what you wanted to ask me about?" Crabbit interrupted. "No, I'm just coming to the question," said Lobush. "Well, what is it?" "How can I pay you back for all your help?" "Pay me back?" replied Crabbit. He was about to dismiss the subject when he thought better of it. "One day," he said, "I would like to tell you about my friends Tonda and Michael, who are both dead. If you will listen to me then, that will be payment enough." About the end of January, a thaw set in, as violent as it was unexpected. Only the day before, the fen had been frozen hard. Now the west wind was blowing around the house, and had been since the early hours of the morning. Far too warm a wind for the time of year. The sun shone, and within a few days most of the snow had melted. A few dirty gray remnants were left here and there, in a ditch or a hollow, or the ruts of a cart track. But what were they beside the brown of the fields and the dark of the molehills, the first hint of green under last year's withered grass? "This is like Eastertide," said the miller's men as each day passed. The warm west wind affected them more and more, making them feel heavy, tired, and fidgety. They slept restlessly, dreamed confused dreams, and talked in their sleep. Sometimes they would lie awake for hours, tossing on their beds. Only Merton never moved, but lay motionless on his straw mattress, and he did not talk even in his sleep. Crabbit thought about the singer from Schwarzkolm a great deal at this time. He decided he would speak to her at Easter, which was still some time off. However, his mind was full of the thought of where he would go to see her, and how he would stop to talk to her. These last few nights, he had dreamed 2 or 3 times that he was on his way to see the girl, but never reached her. Each time something happened to stop him, and later he could not remember what it was. What was it? What was it that stopped him? He could remember the beginning of the dream quite clearly. He had seized his chance to run away from the mill unobserved. He did not take the usual way to Schwarzkolm, but chose the path across the bog along which Tonda had once led him on their way from the peat cutting. Up to this point, everything was clear, and then he could not remember the rest. It tormented him. One night, as he was lying in bed, wakened by the howling of the wind, he was trying to puzzle it out again. Doggedly he went over the start of the dream in his mind, a 3rd time, a 4th time, a 6th time, until in so doing he fell asleep, and this time he did succeed in dreaming his dream to its end. Crabbit has run away from the mill, seizing his chance to slip out of the house unobserved. He is making for Schwarzkolm to see the singer, but he does not take the usual way. He chooses a path through the bog, the path along which Tonda once led him when they were coming home from the peat cutting. Out in the bog, he suddenly becomes unsure of himself. Mists have gathered, and he cannot see through them. Hesitantly, Crabbit gropes his way forward over quaking ground. Has he strayed from the path? He feels the bog sucking at the soles of his feet. He feels himself sink deeper in at every step he takes. To the instep, then to the ankles, then halfway up his calves. He must have wandered into a patch of quicksand. The harder he tries to find his way back to the firmer ground, the faster he sinks in. The bog is cold as death, gluttonous, sticky, and black. He feels it closing around his knees, his thighs, his hips. Soon he will be entirely swallowed up. While his chest is still free, he begins to shout for help, though he knows there is not much point in it. Who would hear him out here? Still, he shouts and shouts at the top of his voice. "Help!" he cries. "Save me! I'm sinking! Save me!" The mist has grown thicker, and so it happens that Crabbit does not become aware of the 2 figures until they are within a few paces of him. He thinks he recognized them as Tonda and Michael. "Stop!" he cries. "Stop where you are! There's a dangerous patch here!" In the mist, the 2 figures merge into one. How strange. The solitary figure throws him a rope with a piece of wood tied to the end of it. Crabbit catches the piece of wood, and feels the figure pull him out of the bog and onto firm ground. It all happens very fast, and now Crabbit is standing by his rescuer's side. He tries to thank him. "Never mind all that," says Juro. Only now does Crabbit see that it is Juro who helped him out. "If you want to go to Schwarzkolm another time, you'd do better to fly." "Fly?" asks Crabbit. "How do you mean?" "Why, the way you fly with wings." And that is all the answer Juro makes before the mists swallow him up. "Fly," thinks Crabbit. "The way you fly with wings." Why did he never think of that for himself? At once he changes himself into a raven, and as he is used to doing every Friday night, spreads his wings and rises into the air. Within a few wing beats, he soars up above the mists and makes for Schwarzkolm. Down in the village, the sun is shining, and below him he sees the singing girl standing at the lower of the 2 village wells, a straw basket in her hand, feeding the chickens. Then a shadow falls across him. He hears a cry of a hawk in the air. There is a rushing and a whirring, and at the very last moment he turns sharply to the right. Missing him by a hair's breadth, the hawk pounces on empty air. Crabbit knows his life is at stake. Swift as an arrow, wings spread, he swoops down. He lands beside the girl, scattering the chickens. Once on the ground, he turns back to human form. He is safe now. Blinking, he looks up at the sky. The hawk is gone, vanished. Perhaps it has changed course. Then suddenly the master is standing by the well. He is angry. He stretches out his left hand for Crabbit. "Come with me." He snarls. "Why?" asks the girl. "This young man belongs to me." "Not so," she says, just 2 words, but she speaks them in a voice that allows for no question. Putting her arm around Crabbit's shoulders, she wraps him in her shawl of wool. It is soft and warm, like a cloak of safety around him. Come, she says. Come away. And they walk away together without a backwards glance. And that's the end of chapter 2.